This is day 10 of 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting. I'm Pastor Mark. I came across this ironic sign on the front of a store. It said, "Come in, we're closed." Obviously, this was an error. I thought it was funny, though. Can you imagine, I thought, if you saw that kind of sign on a church that says it's welcoming, it's really closed. Now, I want to share with you a great irony in our society today. We have got to be the most connected society in history. With the internet, smartphones, and social media, we can communicate with almost anyone, anywhere, at any time. And yet, being so incredibly connected, here's the irony. According to George Gallup, Americans are among the loneliest people in the world. How can this be? We are incredibly connected and yet incredibly lonely as a society. The average American has lots of acquaintances, but very few close friends. Many of us have lots of acquaintances, but I'm talking about close relationships. As one writer put it, I've never known anyone who was isolated, lonely, unconnected, had no deep relationships, and yet had a meaningful and joy-filled life. Researchers found that if you isolate yourself from others, you're 3 times more likely to die an early death, 4 times more likely to suffer emotional burnout, 5 times more likely to be clinically depressed, and 10 times more likely to be hospitalized for an emotional or mental disorder. That's the power of fellowship. Another study that tracked the lives of 7,000 people over 9 years says that researchers found that the most isolated people were 3 times more likely to die than those with strong relational connections. That people who had bad health habits such as smoking, poor eating habits, obesity, or alcohol use, but had strong social ties, lived significantly longer than people who had great health habits but were isolated. In other words, it goes on to say it's better to eat Twinkies with good friends than to eat broccoli alone. Sheep are not attacked in herds. Sheep are attacked when they become isolated from the rest of the flock. I want you to think about that for a moment. We are most vulnerable when we're isolated. Satan wants us in isolation because he knows we are more vulnerable to spiritual attack. And that's why we do what we have called small groups. We're also calling them community groups to highlight the importance of being in community. Jesus preached to the multitudes, but he discipled only a few in the context of a small group. Marc 3:14 says that Jesus appointed 12 that they might be with him. He had 12 disciples that would be with him. So, do you want to be like Jesus? Jesus belonged to a small group. Jesus led a group. Jesus had close friends. Jesus was not the Lone Ranger. If anybody could do it, Jesus could, right? But he chose not to. Jesus was in community. And this is why we offer and promote groups in our church. So today, we want you to pray for all of our groups and our group leaders and those in the group, but also pray for those not connected to any group or anyone in our church. Pray for those in our church who have yet to connect to have friendships in the church. Pray also that God would grow our leaders and raise up more leaders in groups. And pray that we would have and see life transformation in our church and our small groups. Thanks for praying today, and God bless.